There's many other means in which you can make money without even being physically somewhere for a gig. Because let's be honest, a gig you have to go set up. You have to be there a couple of hours before that. You've got hours and hours and hours of practice, preparing. And then you've got the hours of being there, hours kind of giving attention to the people that are there, appreciating them after. If you do it every day and you're traveling, it can be very, very exhausting.
Hello, Clever Harvest Tribe, and welcome back to Season 7. We are with artist, composer, and vocalist, Amy Oprenova.
Ooh, hello.
But let me brag about you for a minute, because you said you studied in England, and it wasn't just any studying. You were like a conservatory violinist and a composer, and now you become a vocalist, a band leader, and a producer for your own music. So tell us a little bit about how did you go from like, okay, violin is probably going to be the first violin in an orchestra to a jazz vocalist? What?
Yeah, so my music journey started really, really early. I was 4.5 when I started playing violin. I finished school here with violins. That was like my main instrument. Throughout school, I was kind of like, okay, well, I can't express myself as much as I'd like to. I was very flamboyant, very like big and loud, and violin was a big and loud instrument, but I just very early on felt it wasn't me. But there was nothing else I really knew. I played a bit of piano, sang at church, but it wasn't anything that I was like really confident in being able to do. And I got into the Birmingham Conservatoire. I just had total meltdown. I had wonderful teachers around me, but I just didn't feel that I could express myself through this piece of wood, let's say. Yeah, I went kind of forward into trying out different things within my first year, and thankfully I had amazing teachers around me. Just said like, just try it, you're not going to lose anything, you're still in the course, you're doing well. We had the chance to do like an elective instrument, like a second instrument. So I chose composition because I thought, well, I can basically write in any style I want, so then I can perform in any style I want. So that's like the best thing, because I was very spread out. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. So I ended up writing a lot and going with a teacher who was actually a music technology teacher. But he was amazing. We just got on with each other. There's like he spoke the same language as me, and he let me be totally creative. He let me write things that I could then perform and use. And by my second year, I was kind of considering jazz because I really love singing. I'm getting really obsessed with Ella Fitzgerald and all these other things. But jazz was so far-fetched. It was like at the end of any music knowledge I knew. I didn't know what these chords were. I didn't know what they were doing. I didn't know what improvisation was. It was just classical, classical, classical. So long story short, I got to year 2 and I thought I'd like to try something different. So I started singing a lot, and I did consider going into the jazz department. But unfortunately, the rules were that I would have to go a year back. And I wasn't really in a state of being able to afford an extra year at the time. I also had a scholarship that then I would have lost. So for me, that really wasn't an option. I ended up doing a little mini concert of people that composed but are not on the composition department, which now thinking about it was something that I probably shouldn't have been allowed to do. Because like all the composers should have their own concert, but ended up doing a concert. A lot of people were involved, most of my pieces, and all the composition department teachers ended up coming. And I was a bit in shock, but it was amazing because I got to hear their feedback. And suddenly the next day, one of the head departments said, "Oh, you got an audition." And I was like, "What audition?" She goes, "Well, you got an audition for the composition department if you at all were considering switching." And I said, I didn't even know that was a thing. So I ended up next day going to this audition. They were listening to a whole hour of my music. And they said, well, you're pretty much a composer, so we would enter you into the composition department. So they offered me an amazing kind of deal. I ended up going on to the composition department with all the composers in year 3, didn't lose a year basically, and they allowed me to keep my scholarship. By the time I graduated, by year 4, I just felt like I love writing, but I love singing even more. But I ended up applying for postgrad. I got into a couple, but I picked Guildhall School of Music. It's actually one of the degrees in London, the first one to do a jazz degree in history. So I'm very proud of that. And yeah, I just did a quick course of postgrad for 9 months. And it's funny because those 9 months, when I was doing singing, it was like, this is what I was supposed to be doing. But that's how life kind of turned around and how I got to do it. And since then, we started a band around the time at university. It was like a gypsy swing style with contemporary our own arrangements. And that grew into having a little band that we toured for about 3 years together. wrote some albums, met a lot of different producers, produced together. That's basically the journey up to the last 2 years, let's say, before pandemic really hit. And everything changed for everybody.
Let me back you up a little bit, because I'm sure when you changed your major, there was some discussion. So how did your parents feel about that?
Yeah, so my parents, I mean, my parents are not musicians at all. They love music. You know, my whole family is very musical, but nobody's really done music as a profession or even studied it. I've got an uncle who's very, very musical. He plays many instruments, including saxophone. He's the one who played me Ella Fitzgerald in the first place. I guess my parents' dream was like, oh, she'll play violin one day in the symphony orchestra. But it just wasn't like, I didn't imagine as a kid having my life sitting on a chair 8 hours a day. It wasn't me. I didn't like the fact in classical music that you just had no leeway. This person plays it like this. This is how you're going to play it. That's the right way. So when I kind of explained that to them and where my journey was, they were quite supportive. So they knew it was going to be a battle, you know, for me to make money from my own music. But it wasn't like they've never supported anything like that, because they're themselves are pioneers in their things. A little bit worried that I was putting 20 years of violin playing behind me and all these lessons paid for. It was just like, okay, you try it, see how it goes. We're here. I love my parents. They're great. In that sense, they really are.
Yeah, it's nice that you didn't have to deal with any sunk cost bias or anything like that. That's amazing.
No, and I don't think they still really understand. I mean, who really does understand the music industry? I don't know, but they didn't really understand what it means to make money from music. There's even a saying in Bulgaria, a musician doesn't feed the family or the house. Because I guess in olden times, if you play in an orchestra, your salary is probably the lowest of the whole country, which is also ironic. We sometimes study as many years as doctors. In that sense, I don't think they would all ever understand why I'd pick exactly singing or how you'd really be successful nowadays, especially with social media and all that. But they've always been supportive. So it hasn't been a question of like, what I get to do.
Well, tell us now how this musician is paying for the family. How do you make
Oh
money
gosh,
with...
this musician right now is on maternity.
Well, you're on maternity leave now, but how do you make money as a musician in the 21st century with social and all this stuff?
I think if we're talking about music, 21st century, I think pandemic has got a lot to say about this, because pandemic totally, for me, changed everything. For us, at least coming out of university, we had to first figure out how do we get gigs. Because I finished uni and I was thinking, okay, I've got a master's, I've got a band. Come on, where are the gigs? Where's the work? Oh, wait a minute. I've got to get my own work. I've got to book my own gigs. And I've got to kind of be my manager. So there was this kind of 1 year of learning this curve. And I feel like this is another topic for another time. But a lot of universities in America is a bit different. But in Europe, they don't teach you the how to. They only teach you how to be a really, really, really good musician. Unfortunately, that's about 10% of the work. That's why many people that go to university to music, then they don't do music. They do something sideways to music. There's something you just learn. You learn how to write your emails. You learn how to talk to places. And that's what I end up doing. Me and the band just spend the next 6 months after university realizing gigs are not going to come to us, trying to find our own work, building up our, let's say, co-brand. Our main kind of income was traveling and getting kind of tour gigs, which was very exhausting, by the way, very hard on health and body, which I realized 3 years later. We would do a lot of local gigs. We end up getting to a gig in Ronnie Scott's even, and that was probably our best gig, fully booked, like the whole top floor. Every gig wasn't the best paid gig, but when you balance it between the bit of teaching, which everybody likes to do, easy money, but also something enjoyable because you get to show your art to somebody else who's going to learn from you, that's combined with obviously creating music and also doing gigs. That was my thing before pandemic. Then the pandemic, I realized that I had missed out on many things, such as putting your music out to sell, streams, and everything else you could possibly get yourself on. We were kind of active on social media, but definitely not as much as we would have liked to or thought was important to. I got married just before pandemic, September 2019. And I was also to a point where the kind of personal lives of the people in my band a little bit changed. So some didn't want to tour so much. Others moved away from England. That's totally fine. Things change. But I had to kind of acknowledge that things are changing and move forward. So that's when I released my solo album, which half of the tracks are with these guys still. And they're wonderful to give me like all the rights to the tracks. That's when pandemic hit. Just before my release. Suddenly I thought, okay, this is a good time to maybe have a baby. I was pregnant throughout the whole pandemic. My son was born, my first son was born early. So he came just when lockdown started. So that was like a whole different experience. But this is when I realized I'm going to have to stop music for a bit and see what's going to happen, because things are going to change. This is also the time when I think TikTok really took over for musicians. Within the music community in Europe, a lot of people are like, oh, TikTok is stupid, TikTok is silly, only youngsters go on it. And that the truth in America and the other places is that musicians are actually making a lot of money without having to be signed by a label, without having to sign their name off, without having to give them 20-30%. And I feel like some platforms, when we talk about the music industry, some platforms such as TikTok are really changing the music industry today. So there's many other means in which you can make money without even being physically somewhere for a gig. Because let's be honest, a gig, you have to go set up. You have to be there a couple of hours before that. You got hours and hours and hours of practice, preparing. And then you've got the hours of being there, hours kind of giving attention to the people that are there, appreciating them after. If you do it every day and you're traveling, it can be very, very exhausting. In my mind, I thought, oh, I'll have these little babies, I'll travel to gigs, I'll get like a nanny. We're all just gonna, tour and have fun and do gigs. And that's just not the truth. You have kids, they start getting sick, they start teething, you put on weight, you don't feel yourself. And the last thing you want to think about is going and gigging out there. The things that are coming out with the new ways you can put your music out there, you don't necessarily have to tour all the time, because life is in season. I can't, give up my kids so that I can go on tour just because I like gigging. But then I do have to make some money, right? I'm happy enough to stay here because I've got that luxury, let's say, from maternity, and my husband's working, but not everybody has got that time. They have to work. So when I'm ready to go to work, I don't want my kids to feel like I've given up on them so I can do my music. I think I encourage every single musician to really look into the new ways of getting your music out there, being able to sell it, being able to have people that really care for you. So when you put a date out in London or Berlin or anywhere, it's going to sell out because those followers are there. There's people you've made connections with.
Yeah, even creators in general, we have to use the social media and get our stuff out there. I use different platforms to get my podcast on, like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all that stuff. Musicians are kind of similar where they also use that, but what is the biggest difference between these major streaming platforms like Spotify versus these music-centric ones like Bandcamp or something like that? Which one is better for you?
With Spotify, I'd say you really need to have quite a few listens, like followers and listens there, to be able to make a decent amount of money. I don't do anything. I've just got them out there and I'm still getting, a few pounds a day, let's say, which is really not much. Bandcamp is designed for musicians. It's a bit like Shopify, but for musicians. To be successful in Bandcamp, you have to bring your followers to Bandcamp. You can do a Bandcamp style thing on your website, but the traffic is very different there. And creating a shop from scratch is quite difficult for it to work, not have bugs, etc. So Bandcamp, I think, is, first, like a social media. So if you interact with other musicians, they'll interact with you. So you find a completely different way of having people that would support you. But also super easy. I mean, my last release, I just used Bandcamp. And it's just really easy to direct people straight there. They can also add on to what you've put as a price. You're selling your CD 15, they feel like it's 20, they can give you that. Their fee is low anyway, but they do give you Bandcamp Fridays. And people know that. So you end up selling more on a Bandcamp Friday where there's no fees because of that. You need to design your page nicely and you need to build followers, and I'm not talking followers, I'm talking community. People that connect with your music, that would follow you every time you have a release. Have somebody that is just there when you put something out, it's going to be bought and you're going to make your money and what you're creating is valued and used by other people for what purpose you had it out for.
Tell us some of the nuggets from that, how to build an audience. In my experience, if you're starting from zero, it takes like 6 to 9 months for people to start noticing you.
It's really hard, and I'm not going to say that I have reached any success yet, because the truth is I'm like on and off on all social media platforms. I make a huge plan for the week and I'm thinking I'm going to post every day, make all this content, and then I end up realizing that I'm full-time with the kids, not able to make that a success. But I think any posting is posting. So even if you do post a little bit every week, it's something. I think you really need to limit it to whatever platform, maybe 2, 3 the most, and find exactly the audience that you want to access. That's not necessarily going to work for Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at the same time. For example, I've got a big following on Facebook, but but the following is from 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And I know that those people do not connect with the things that I have the same amount of followers almost now on TikTok. It's not going to connect with them there. No matter what age you are at, trying to reach a particular age, a particular audience, and thinking, okay, what would they like to see? I think the more vulnerable you are, the more you show of yourself, the more you, especially in music, you talk about your music, what your music represents. Because most of us artists, let's say almost everybody, talks about themselves or have their emotions put into the music. So I always want to make people feel good on the other side. So that's the thing I try to represent. It's not easy. I feel like Facebook and Instagram without paid ads have made it very difficult to grow naturally. Post lots of stuff and see which one resonates the most. And say, okay, out of these 10 videos, which is one most successful one? Why does it resonate with those people? What kind of people does it resonate with? You might think that you appeal to like 18-year-old, kids. And then you realize that most people that liked your stuff are Gen X people that like dogs or something. And that's totally fine. You just need to embrace that and go, okay, I've got people here that really care for my music. Let's push on that. So that's my main advice, I'd say. But I'm definitely on like stage, not even one, stage 0 of learning all of that myself. Because for everything that worked 5-10 years ago is not working now. We have to change with the platforms.
Well, I would say with that statement, you're at least stage 5.
That's really not. But also the other thing is we talk about, the big platforms, but most people make money from LinkedIn or Twitch or, they're big as well, but it's a particular audience on there, or even just Bandcamp. But they interact constantly on Bandcamp. And that's the thing. If you commit to something, you got to pick exactly what you commit to, and trying to cover every single platform is not really going to work in my eyes.
Yeah, it can become stressful too because you're just kind of chasing something that's constantly moving. My 3 platforms are LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram, but TikTok I get the most like views, but LinkedIn is better for engagement. What are your 3?
The views, unfortunately, don't matter as much, I think, because you don't know who's behind those views. It could be somebody who's viewed it like 6 times, or somebody who's to bot on the other side. I think the engagement is the most important thing. Having people repost or comment, got 5 comments and you comment back. Like, for example, I've noticed that on TikTok, a lot of people that resonate with me are actually mums. When I say, I haven't had time to get my hair ready for the gig, and because I've got a 2-year-old, that's how those people would start commenting on my post, because they were like, I know the feeling. So it's things that you try to get people to really resonate back, not just saying, oh, look at my amazing song, I wrote this on the beach, blah blah blah. That's part of engaging, being like thinking always about them, the people that are listening to you, because half could be bots, but the other half could be genuine people that feel sad at home and they need something to encourage them. So you be that encouragement, and then you'll get the engagement. So I think views are not as important, definitely as engagement. So understanding your platform, understanding how the engagement would work on that particular platform, I think is key.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end this, you guys. Not everything that glitters is gold, and glitter is very 2010s. 2020, we want to see the gold, the nitty gritty, all of the stuff happening behind the scenes.
Yeah. And also, I think, last to say, if you decide to go for social media, earning from social media, it is really hard work. You shouldn't think it's easier than being in a 9-to-5, because it's not. It's, 24/7. It could be quite stressful. These are real people that are constantly criticizing your work. As an artist, that could be very damaging. So I think, especially when you start up, you need to kind of have a balance with something you really love, that is always going to be there, and social media that could possibly, big up your earnings.
And also social media as part of the strategy, not the strategy. You're still going to need some outbound outreach to get some actual money. Well, Amy, this is awesome. I said you're on Spotify under Amy Oprenova, but where else can we find your stuff and follow you online?
You can find my music on Bandcamp, on Spotify. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm also on LinkedIn, but not very active on that yet. But yes, most of my music you can find on all the main platforms. Of course, Amazon Music, iTunes, YouTube Music, it's all there as well.
Yeah, when I Googled you, the whole first page is you. So...
Yes. It's fun when you do a project to make sure that, it's out there. When somebody has a question, they can really find it. Otherwise, they just give up on your music. So, watch this space. Hopefully in the next half a year, we'll be coming with new projects. A couple of bands here locally now in Bulgaria that I found. I'm amazed by what's around here as well. So I'm very much looking forward to be able to get slowly back into music properly, and, and being present everywhere even more.
Yeah, and I can be like, I know her.
Yay! And yes, good luck with your stuff as well. I love this podcast. I think it's amazing to find bilingual people. I know we see the world a little bit different than everybody else, and that's always a lovely, nice thing. So yes, good luck with your pages as well.
Well, thank you. I think it's just going well. Actually, this is the first person I'm telling about it on the air, but I'm actually writing a book. So
amazing.
I'm hoping this podcast will be part of the book.
Amazing. Yeah, that would be really fun.
All right, Clever Harvest Tribe, thank you so much for staying with us all the way until the end. I hope you got some tips from this, because the creator economy is evolving, especially now that you add AI into the mix. We're going from Industrial Revolution 4.0 to 5.0 pretty soon. So if you haven't caught up to 4.0, you have some catching up to do. But this is GabyV for Clever Hybrids, and we'll see you in the next one.